Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we got Scott Ritter. Actually, had to reschedule him. He's got some dog barking and housework noise problems, so we're gonna do him tonight at 9 o'clock. But there's plenty to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and so Scott Ritter's on hold until 9 p.m. We got Larry Johnson coming in at 3, but so I'm already set up, and so hey, what the heck? Let's go ahead and talk about some of the big stories that are hitting the news. And I think the big one that we got to start off with is the New York Times report. And the report is, see, we got a few people watching. There we go. I guess, big story of the day, notwithstanding the, economic calamity, but which is, I guess, the story every day if you're in the U.S. But so apparently, based on all I've been reading and all of my research, which is not as much as it normally would be if I were home, and I weren't doing the pickup truck chronicles, but but at any rate, but it appears that there's been some kind of internal discussions amongst Trump and his advisors. It also appears that, interestingly enough, Tulsi Gabbard, who you would expect, Hegseth, who you would expect, and I'm not sure who else, right? But at least those two, apparently at some point there was a meeting, and apparently they, I guess, not only said, we don't want to do this, but apparently they also said something which I find interesting. And they advised that, look, bringing all that military hardware to the Middle East itself could cause a wider conflict that as was stated, we don't want. Now, what that implies is that they don't want a war with Iran, that they don't want, a broader war in the Middle East, which wouldn't surprise me a bit. So here's my first inclination. And, I'm going to say, this is what I say about every president, and this is what I think people should do. This is my belief now that we are screwed. You're going to get the blue Zionist warmonger, a person who has no respect for the Constitution, or you can get the red Zionist warmonger who has no respect for the Constitution. That either way, you can celebrate. Maybe one gives us a little less chance of getting nuked. That could be a good thing, but either way, they're both to some extent, puppets for the Zionism. I'm not going to say puppets for Israel, because the U.S. is in fact a Zionist empire. The empire is a Zionist first empire. The official religion of the U.S. empire is clearly Zionism at this point. I mean, it's not Christianity, it's not Judaism. All along, what they say, our Judeo-Christian values and ethics and all that kind of stuff. Well, apparently none of them ever listen to the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the peacemakers. How about we start there? Apparently the Sermon on the Mount doesn't count. But my point being this, so when it comes to Trump, we'll attack him for his many transgressions, and if he does something that is good, bad, or indifferent, we got to touch on it. Here's what I would have to say. My first inclination when I heard that Trump, as has been put in the media, right? Basically, they're putting it like this. Donald Trump, that Israel said, we want to lead the attack and we want to attack and but we need your, quote, assistance. That's the immediacy of it. Before I go further and talk about Trump's reaction, let me give you my reaction to this. Based on my research, and probably yours too, if you're in the chat, you've probably been keeping up with this stuff. In what has been kind of a tit for tat strike, back and forth strikes with Israel and in Iran, they're not so much tit for tat anymore. Iran sends lots of drones. They are able to distract and overwhelm the Israeli air defense system, which then allows them, I mean, literally hundreds of drones, disrupt, distract, overwhelm the Israeli air defense system, then able to send in their high-speed missiles. Now, again, people use the term hypersonic missiles, but um, as you if you've listened to any of my discussions with Andre Martianov, who I'm going to contact and see if he'll come on at 9 tonight anyway with Scott. That would be great if we could get him and Scott together again. But the term hypersonic is thrown around a lot. Oftentimes, traditional ballistic missiles reach hypersonic speeds when they're, in their terminal decline. And there's a big difference between the Kinjals, Zircons, missiles that are powered. Some missiles are like you fire a missile, right, and it's propelled for a certain uh, percentage of the journey, and then the propulsion runs out and it basically shot like a bullet the rest of the way, right? And on the way down it can reach hypersonic speeds in its terminal decline when it's coming down. Other missiles like its Zircon or Dagger, they are um um powered the whole way. They don't have a traditional ballistic trajectory, where they go up and that like rainbow up and down traditional ballistic trajectory. They go up in outer space and then they come down in a terminal decline at hypersonic speed, which means that actually some air defense systems can still create, the computer can still calculate a firing solution for them. You know what I mean? If you're going in a straight line, a computer can still see where you're going to go, and mathematically it can project where you're going to be where the missile's going to be at a particular time, and fire a couple of missiles and ideally meet it and stop it. That's one thing. Whereas the Russian Zircons, the Russians uh um various Kinjals, they're powered the entire way, and they make violent turns and twists at the last few minutes, making them near impossible. A computer cannot predict where they're going to be because they're not going in a straight line. They're all over the place. And then oftentimes what they do is, for a lot of air defense systems, just so you'll know, a lot of air defense systems, the weakness for them, they catch things coming in angles. A lot of air defense systems, their greatest weakness is straight ahead of them. So a lot of these missiles, they don't come in on an angle. These Zircons or what have you, they make violent turns, and at the last second they'll go up and come straight down and do all kinds of things like that, right? That are unpredictable, and they don't necessarily do the same herky-jerky move with every missile there. They do different things. So bottom line is this: the Iranians, when you hear the Iranians or you hear the Houthis have hypersonic missiles, don't equate them to Zircon or Dagger or the same types of missiles that the Russians have. The technology is much, much different and on a much higher level. But notwithstanding all of that, here's my point. That we're getting at. These last so-called tit for tat strikes between Israel and Iran got the better of it by far. They demonstrated that they could hit Israel kind of at will, that they could overwhelm Israel's air defense system, which are effectively U.S. air defense systems, at will. And apparently they weren't even using their best stuff. So if they really went high tech with their best stuff and they really wanted to hit Israel, they could knock the hell out of Israel, which means, since Israel is using our stuff, when you hear this David Sling and Iron Dome and somebody's arrow, whatever the hell Israel calls them, a lot of times it's just Patriot systems. More often than not, it's like Patriot systems, THAAD systems, things like that have been renamed for Israel. Same company, same technology, right? Well, here's my point. So apparently the last strike between Israel and Iran, when Israel tried to tat for Iran's tit, shall we say, what was reported broadly is Israel had like 100 planes heading for Iran. They had missiles, they had all kinds of things. As they got close to Iran, now this is what I read. They found that they were being monitored by, quote, unidentified anti-air defense systems. In other words, something was locking onto them and they weren't sure what it was. Right now, that could very well indicate that Russia has given them S-400s. that could very well indicate that their indigenous systems are really, because their indigenous systems are really good in Iran. Iran is, do not be misled. They're a high tech society. This is not some backwater society. They are on par with tops. They are on par with the United States. Maybe better in some areas. They're not to be trifled with. They have great air defense systems. And let me add this. um After that last attempted strike where the Israel's attempted to come in, what was reported was that the Israelis got somewhere, I've seen these numbers, 70 to 100 kilometers from the Iranian border, and they had to just fire what they had and turn back because they were all locked on and they were going to get shot down, and they knew it. F-35s, all that kind of stuff, heading into Iran. They got locked on. If they didn't turn around, they were dead men. So they fired whatever they had. They turned around, and Iran shot almost all of it down. Very, very little damage was done. The Israelis then went on to report that they had decimated, destroyed, and obliterated Iran's air defense system. So that's the last of what happened. The Israelis, apparently, according to significant, fairly trustworthy reports, they were thwarted in an attempt to launch a missile and air attack on Iran. But of course, propaganda-wise, they reported that they knocked the crap out of Iran's air defense system. So it's just the right time for the U.S. and Israel to come in and attack them. Okay. Since then, what we also know is this: the Russians are big time into Iran, in Iran, and the Russians, as I have been told by numerous sources, by my intel people, whatever that means, I don't know the hell, but my sources, right, both who have very, very good contacts in Russia, is that Russia is helping Iran to build a very significant air defense system, an integrated network air defense system. I guess it would be similar to the type that obviously it would be similar to the type that Russia employs. That they are also sharing in the ISR, of course, in intel, which means that if the U.S. or Israel as soon as they take off and they're heading for Iran, Iran's going to know it. Now, Iran has some major um, um, Iran has satellites. Iran has some major radar installations in the mountains, that I guess would be immediately targeted. But I'm sure they're pretty well defended. But the bottom line is, as Andrei Martyanov said, the best the U.S. could do would be stand up from a long range and throw a lot of missiles and throw a lot of stuff at them. They really couldn't come in and try to attack Iran, come in and actually fly into Iran and bomb them, because the risk would be too high. I mean, there's a risk they could lose everything. They don't know just how much electronic warfare and air defense capabilities Iran has. They don't know how much the Russians have given them. I mean, let's face it, if the Russians, they've got S-300s, they've got high-level S-300s in Iran, and they've got the S-300, their own S-300 knockoffs, which are some of the best in the world already. Do they have S-400? I don't know. If they got S-400, that's a problem. Let's not forget the S-400 not only has an incredible range, the S-400 system also fires those hypersonic anti-air missiles. I mean, somebody's firing an air defense missile at an aircraft coming in at 10,000 miles an hour. You ain't got a good chance of getting away from that one. You see what I mean? They lock onto you, you are finished. So do you really want to fly into that environment and find out? Do you still really want to F around and find out and say, well, I think we've just really knocked the crap out of their air defense system, and get in there like, holy crap, the Russians have loaded them. Their system is good. The Russians have loaded them with electronic warfare. The Russians have loaded them with some, S-400, God only knows what. And you go flying in there to attack the Iranians, and your ass is, you're flying into a death zone, right? So that becomes a question. You go in there and S-400 starts coming on, you better get the hell out. That everybody knows that. You go flying into Iran to attack Iran, and with everything they got, you're in trouble. And then S-400 systems come up. You're really going to get lose a lot of aircraft, a lot of pilots. It's going to be devastating. So do you want to attack? The worst case scenario, you attack Iran and you lose, and you're not even successful on the attack. And now what do you do? Come back for a second round? Now what do? You've attacked Iran and you've lost in the initial attack. The potential is there for that to happen. So I'm laying that as a foundation for where we go next with this. And this is important. I just want to lay that foundation. With that background being said, There's another thing that has to be taken into account here. What was reported under the first Trump administration? Let me look here and make sure I haven't got anything really weird. Uh, okay. Under the and I haven't heard many people say this, but this is a reality that you have to take into account. One of the significant things that happened during the first Trump administration, as was reported in John Bolton's book, I forgot what it was called, something in the room. I forgot what it was. At any rate, one of the things that he said was that they were all ready to attack Iran. They're going to let Iran have it, and Trump called it off. And at which John Bolton referred to as one of the most bizarre things that any president has done. Really, that tells you the mindset of these neocons. The most bizarre thing that any president has done. I mean, we've had like slavery, we've had like Japanese Americans thrown into prison camps. I mean, we've had some pretty strange things that were done by presidents that, in hindsight, looking back, saying, "Yeah, it's probably not a good idea to do that." Right? We've had the Palmer raids. I mean, I could go on and on. Throughout the history of the United States, to claim that failing to start a war that you don't have no idea where it would go, failing to start a war was the most bizarre thing that a president could ever do. That's where the neocons are. But here's my point. My point is there's a history here. Trump didn't want to attack Iran because I think he didn't want a major war and he understood the potential ramifications. And he didn't want a major war, right? Now, guess what? What we are told is he consulted with his inner circle, which included Tulsi Gabbard. Apparently, Hegseth was included in that conversation. What I was told, actually, I could bring it up for you. Let me bring it up for you. Maybe I can share it with you. That's probably a good idea. Let me share this info with you. Okay. What do we got here? In a meeting, one of several discussions about the Israeli plan. So they had that number, but in one of the meetings, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, this is from, by the way, this is Larry Johnson. In in a meeting this month, one of several discussions about the Israeli plan, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, presented a new intelligence assessment that said that, listen to this, the buildup of American weaponry, just the buildup, could potentially spark a wider conflict with Iran that the United States did not want. A range of officials echoed Ms. Gabbard's concerns in the various meetings. Susie Wiles, White House Chief of Staff, Pete Hegseth, and JD Vance all voiced doubts about the attack. Okay. So you got Hegseth. Now, why would Hegseth, people think, well, he's a lunatic, which he seems like a freaking lunatic to me, that he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, all of those kind of things. He doesn't seem like he's, the intellectual giant of the administration by any stretch of the imagination. But here's my point. He's more like comes like a rah-rah, yeah, America number one. Let's get it. He comes across as one of those guys. Look at my newest tattoo. We're gonna get him, dudes. You know. But at any rate, so apparently, they were like, we're gonna do this, dude. And apparently, if you think about it, they were even a level further because they weren't just saying we shouldn't attack Iran. They were going further saying, man, this buildup of weaponry in the Middle East could cause problems. Because if you think about it, look, if, as I've said, there are a lot of philosophies when it comes to self-defense. And one philosophy is, hey, I don't want any trouble. I don't want any trouble. Just back away and walk away. I don't want any trouble. The another is, look, if you feel like you're really going to have to fight, reserve the right to strike first. Right? If you're like, man, I can't talk this dude down. He just wants to fight. I don't know what I'm going to do here. I'm not going to wait for this guy to punch me. I'm going at him first and I'm going to take him out. I'm going to neutralize the threat beforehand. I don't want any trouble. I don't want any trouble. It's because, the clenched jaws, the unreasonable starry eyes, this anger, fury that says, I'm ready to fight, clenched fist, right? And you read this guy's body language and you say, you're not talking this guy down. He's ready to fight. And you're trying to stop him rather than just continue to try to talk him down. Take him out, take him down, Do what you got to do. Put this guy out of, put this guy out of your misery as quickly as possible. That's one school of thought. See what I mean? As opposed to continue to try to get out of it no matter what. Option two, when you realize, hey, I don't think there's a way out of it, don't wait for the other guy to strike first. Put this, in this as best you can, as quickly as you can, as violently as you can, right? Here's my point. So when you start building up a bunch of weapons and you're like, we're bringing in B-2 bombers and all this stuff to strike Iran, what happens if Iran says, man, I can't let them build up all these B-1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 bombers on. I can't let them build everything up. They're bringing in more ships. They're bringing in more people. If I wait too long, they're going to have a lot of stuff. What happens if Iran says, I'm taking it all out now? What if Iran says, if I got two options, if they decide that you're surely going to attack them, if their intelligence, Russian intelligence, everything reads it, and they're getting back channel stuff, they're getting ISR from Russia, and as they say, C3 ISR, right, from Russia, and Russia says we're getting all kinds of stuff here that says they're going to attack you on whatever, May 8th or something, right? May 8th, they're coming in. And that's what everything says. And they're putting everything. And now the Iranians decide, okay, they're going to hit me on May 8th. Why the hell would they wait till May 8th, till you've built everything up? Instead, the Iranians say, take everything you can out now. Everything, every missile, every base, every port, everything. Smoke these people. And then you're going to have to fight them anyway. You're going to fight a weakened empire, but smoke everything they got, right? And they have the missiles to do that. So I think what the inner circles of Trump people were saying, they have the capacity, if they decide to open fire on us first, to smoke everything we got with missiles and just not stop. And missiles keep coming out of the mountains over and over and over from various things. And we're getting hit every which way. And we can't even take off out of our airfield. They hit every one of our airfields and smoke them. And we can't take planes off. Our ships got missiles coming in at them. And some of our ships are getting hit. Some of them are. We were on the defense. We're getting hit. Then what do? So I think the advisors wisely said, man, just building this stuff up is going to be a problem. Okay, so here's what I'm getting at. For the second time, apparently, I guess this was wordy way to get there. For the second time, Trump said, I'm not doing that. Now, one may say, and I'm not trying to say this is not, people, anytime you say Trump did something and it's not, I hate Trump, people flip out. It's not, I hate Trump, it's not, I love Trump. I'm reporting on things as I see them. I think what we saw here was an example of something when it comes to Trump. And you know what? It aligns with something that I said prior to Trump's election. I said, look, Trump is just a different kind of neocon. He's a similar neocon, but he's a different kind of neocon. Here's the difference. Trump is more the bully kind of neocon. The Biden administration, they're ready for a fight with Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. They're ready to fight everybody at the same time. They're just madmen who World War III, and we're going to go nuclear, and then they just want the big clash. They're ready for the big clash. Trump is more like this. I don't want to fight with the big boys. I want to beat up on the little ones. So he's perfectly happy to fire a lot of missiles at Yemen to go after the Houthis because, they can put up the Houthis can put up, as we've seen so far, an aggravation, a bit of a fight for the empire, right? They can aggravate the empire. They can cause problems for the empire. The empire can bomb them back symbolically, right? Because that's all they're doing, symbolic bombings against Yemen, because they don't even know where the hell any of their weapons are, quite frankly. So Trump is fine with that because it's like a show of force. Oh, right, we'll punch the crap out of Yemen. Yeah, punch the crap out of Yemen. Come on. You know what I mean? It has like the gross domestic product of Iowa, of an Iowa corn farm, for God's sake, right? This you're not exactly struggling with the big boys, and Trump is comfortable with that. He's comfortable fighting Grenada or somebody like that, or Yemen. He's very comfortable with that because it's a symbolic war. It's not a real war. Trump does not want in my opinion, I could be wrong, and I felt this all along. because a lot of people are like, Trump's going to attack Iran for sure. And I'm like, because if you've been watching my show, I've been saying, I don't think he will. I don't think he will. And it wasn't that I think he's a good guy or bad guy. I just don't think he's the bully type. That's his makeup. The bully likes to beat up on little people that he can push around. The bully don't want to fight a guy his own size. He don't want to take a big punch. And I just think Trump looks at Iran and he's like, it's a nasty one. And might I add, what's left out here? Look, and I suspected Tulsi Gabbard, for all of her weaknesses, would give Donald Trump, at least, if nothing else, that she'd give him a frank assessment. If nothing else, I expected that she would, Tulsi Gabbard being who she is, that she'd give Trump a very frank and honest assessment, that he would hear reality from her. We can certainly disparage her for her positions on the Middle East and Zionism, etc. Fair enough, and other things. But my point being, I felt she would probably give an honest assessment, that it wouldn't just be political rhetoric that somebody wanted to hear. And if that is in fact the case, then what it means is that she probably said to Donald Trump, look, everything that I said about Iran, basically, they got missiles. We got problems. We go with them. They can hurt us, and they can hurt us bad, and we could lose this one, and we could lose it in hours if they decide to. It could go nuclear. It could get terrible. It could just wipe everything out. This is a chance you're taking that is not a good idea. Militarily, do you really want this fight thousands of miles from home, going up against a person who in that region, it's a peer competitor? Is Iran a peer competitor? Well, let's just say you don't use nukes on Russia's border and you use nukes in the region, and they go all over the oil fields and everywhere else. The fallout could go to Israel. The fallout could go to all of your the Gulf Coast. You could, if you use nukes, you take a chance of polluting the oil fields, your allies, everybody, the bases you're in, you have to leave, you name it. Do you really want to do that? So, notwithstanding the use of nukes, which could also be somewhat suicidal, and might I add, as Andre Martianov said, it would so isolate the United States that the rest of this discussion of economics may just be not even worth having. So the long and short of it is, with accurate information, I'm sure Trump just looked at it and said, nah, the answer is no for the second time. That's what it comes down to. This is the second time Trump said no. It appears that he said no. If this is all true, it came out of the New York Times. We don't know how true it is. But as I said, I got, we got info from Larry Johnson earlier, and we're going to talk to Larry Johnson again today at 3 p.m. about some of this stuff, enough to say, okay, makes sense that they would back down. And based on what Larry has reported about the information Trump received, it makes sense, which means that at least that theater, shall we say, is out of play for now. What happens next hour, next month, next week, we don't know. But for now, it appears that Iran as a military theater is out of play, notwithstanding the continued unthinkable violence, murderous genocide going on against the innocent people of Palestine, the civilians. I mean, it's just amazing to watch this, to watch Joe Biden come out and speak here the other day as best he could. It was pathetic. And then say, doesn't Trump have a heart? He's talking about Social Security. Trump has no heart. And I'm like, why do these politicians in the United States always talk as though Israel and the horrible things they're doing regarding Zionism doesn't exist, right? What was it? Was it I believe Marco Rubio came out the other day, yesterday or the day before, and he says, yes, we want to deal with the UK, but they're going to have to drop, one of their censorship laws. I don't know which one it is. They're going to have to drop one of their censorship laws in order for us to do that, right? Now, keep in mind something. a while back. Me and many other people said the same thing. A lot of us said when JD Vance gave his infamous speech in Germany to lambast the Europeans over their censorship laws and all that stuff, we said, you're right, but what about Zionism? What you're doing is as bad or worse than anything they're doing. So you may be right, but it's the pot calling the kettle black, right? Well, Marco Rubio is now coming out saying, hey, you've got to drop some of your censorship laws. They're unthinkable if you want to deal with us, the UK. Really? Really? And we're, I mean, you're right, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, you're right. But here's the problem. Again, you can see the splinter in their eye, but you can't see the log in yours, buddy. Here we have the Trump administration. A judge is saying you sent this guy to El Salvador, or people at El Salvador. The judge says you got to send him back. You got to send him back. That was illegal. You can't do that. And the Trump administration acknowledges to the judge, you got us, judge. You're right. However, we are so powerful, we can launch an economic war on the entire world. We can commit a genocide. We can launch an economic war against China. We can encircle China with bases and threaten them with missiles. We can launch a massive full spectrum war against Russia. But we are weak in the face of the powerful and sovereign El Salvador. We said to the El Salvadorans, would you please send our guy back? Please. A judge told us that we couldn't. Please, can you send him back, please? And the mighty emperor of El Salvador said to the United States, no, I shall keep him forever, and there's nothing you can do to stop me, not ever. And I don't know, you might remember 2003, the Hague Invasion Act. The Hague Invasion Act of 2003 said that if the International Court in Hague were to bring him, this had to do with like Afghanistan and Iraq and the war crimes that were being committed by American soldiers. Congress literally passed a law that said the U.S. can attack, invade the Hague if they try to hold American citizens, American politicians, American soldiers to account for violation of international law, war crimes, crimes against humanity. If they try to hold us accountable for any of that and they hold any American citizens there, that the United States literally can attack the Hague. But when it comes to El Salvador, pal, we can't screw around with them. Their army is far too mighty for us. The Trump administration has told the judge that, hey, El Salvador has an American, even though we sent them there. We ask for them back, but they won't give them to us. What are we to do? We're weak. We're defenseless in the face of the mighty El Salvadoran empire. It is absurd. It is not a plausible argument, and the judge should hold the U.S. The Trump administration in contempt. He should hold them in contempt. That is not a plausible argument that the U.S. is not. That's like somebody has a little 2-year-old and they got a toy, and the 2-year-old takes the toy from them, and they're, hey, get that toy from that kid. It's dangerous. I can't. Little Jimmy won't give it back to me. But that's sharp. He could hurt himself or put it in his mouth. I asked little Jimmy to give it back, but little Jimmy won't. You're 40 years old and the kid's 2. He won't give it back. It's not a plausible argument. So as J.D. Vance lambasts all of Europe, accurately so, as Marco Rubio lambasts the UK, accurately and viably so, the level of hypocrisy is without equal. And again, what is it? What is that again? It's the let's ignore Zionism and pretend like we're not doing. It's like, yeah, well, we're doing censorship for Zionism, but that of course doesn't count. We're committing a genocide, human rights, but that does it only count. Everything counts, but we cross our fingers when it comes to Zionism. So we can tell your country don't do censorship, but you're doing censorship beyond any constitutional value that this country could ever claim to hold, which it doesn't. So how can you say that? Because my fingers are crossed because it's Zionism. So none of that counts. When it comes to Zionism, you have no rights. None. Zero. You have no privileges. You have no rights. When it comes to Zionism in the United States, this is the most totalitarian state on earth when it comes to Zionism. But doesn't count against Zionism. Here's the bottom line. As I've said many times, when it comes to speech, we judge free speech on whether it protects unpopular speech. The First Amendment was designed to protect people who are speaking out against the government, who are speaking out against power. If somebody walks out and says, I love America, I got flying a bunch of flags, and you say, there you go, they've got free speech to say that. That's not how you judge it. You judge it by the person who says, I hate America, and then they burn 10 flags. Whether you like that or not, that's what's supposed to be protected. So when you don't protect the free speech is not meant to protect the person that says, go Israel, the United States is right. COVID, all the way. It was it came from a wet market. No, and the Chinese did it all on us. Boo, down with the Chinese. That person, the CIA is going to love them. The president's going to go, hooray! They're attacking the Chinese and they're saying everything we want them to say. But that's not how you judge free speech. You judge free speech by the person who says the government's lying to you. They're lying to you every day. They're lying to you about everything. That's the guy that's supposed to be protected. And that's the guy that ain't protected, which means you don't have free speech. You don't have occasional or kind of free speech. Either you have it or you don't. In this instance, we don't. So the hypocrisy is there. It is what it is. Let's move on. Let's see how much time we got left. A few more minutes. Next, we'll go here. So I've been reading. I'm no economist, but I did stay in a holiday in hotel right last night. No, actually I didn't, but I'm sure you've heard that advertisement a million times. Anyway, but it appears, here are my thoughts. Here's a couple of thoughts that I have, and we've all been saying this for a while. The United States, Western neoliberal capitalism, I don't care what you call it. I only care what it does, right? As we've said, what is it? The outcome is the intention. You can name our economic system anything you want. In the bottom line, what is it? It is a system that can't produce the jobs that people need to feed their families. It can't produce a comfortable life. It can't even produce a livable life. It can't even produce a life for a working class or a middle class. It is decimating. It doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be completely changed, revised, completely changed. Because what our economic system does is it extracts money from the poor, the working class, the working poor, and the poor around the world. It extracts that money and it puts it in the hands of the ruling elite. We had a crash the other day, and it was the most perfect example of what this system does. We had an economic crash. And what did you hear Trump talking with his buddies and Charles Schwab? He made $2.5 billion in a few hours. What did he do? They drive the value of assets down as low as possible. And these rich people then buy them at cheap, at rock bottom, at fire sale prices. And then when the value of the assets rise back, they're far richer than they were before. That's all they do. That's what happened the other day. While you and I and the people around are all over the place are like, oh my God, my 401k. They're like, yeah, your 401k. The money went out of your 401k and into my hands. Gotta love it. Ooh, what a great system. If you're Charles Schwab, if you're just Charles Schmo on the street, not so great. So what we saw, the system, even in its dying throes, in the system's dying last few breaths and kicks, it still did very well what it does. So where are we now? I agree with old Alex Craner. I agree with him on one thing. I was listening to Alex Craner the other day, smart guy. And I don't agree with everything, but I think he's a pretty sharp dude, and he's worth listening to. There's things you'll agree, things you won't agree with him, but I think he's a very sharp dude. I like Alex Craner. Good guy. Anyway, I need to send him an email and get him on next week when I get back in town. Just talk with Alex. I've interviewed him. I like Alex Craner. Anyway, so here's my point. What he said was true. And you've got to accept this reality. You got to accept this reality. The system that we have is uh, uh, um, it just can't live anymore. You know what I mean? It's on hospice. That's the truth. And he brought up a very important point. And here's the important point in the United States. And I already knew this. I didn't know the exact numbers, but I knew of this dynamic. In the United States, we got somewhere around 130 to 150 trillion in debt, right? Now, how much money is circulating in our system? 5 to 6 trillion dollars. How in the hell do you take 5 to 6 trillion dollars and pay 150 trillion in debt? That's not going to work, and that's not sustainable. And might I add, we've got a government that works well when it comes to increasing the debt, ideologically speaking. Trump comes in with old Doge boy, right? And the whole thing was a scam. The whole thing was I won't say a scam or a fraud. I would say unworkable within the system. Here's what I mean. So old Doge boy comes in and he's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lay off a bunch of people at the Department of this and that. And so we're going to lay off a bunch of workers, right? We're going to working class people, people who buy cars and townhouses and go on vacations at Disney World and do those kinds of things. We're going to lay off those kind of people who are productive when it comes to our look, government money is going to be spent. These people spend it productively. Watch where I go with this. He says we got to save the money because we're 37 trillions in dollars. So the implication is we must lay off a bunch of worker class people to save money on the economy. Now, the flaw in that, before we go any further, was why are we $37 trillion in debt? Because we've had somewhere around $15 trillion since 2001, actually, around $15 trillion in tax cuts, mostly 80 to 90% for the rich. Because we've had another 15 to 17, well, I've heard numbers anywhere from 9 to 17 trillion dollars in wars, mostly in the Middle East and all over. But so pretty much of our $7 trillion in debt, 37 trillion, which we were around 5 to 7 trillion in 2020. So of the 30 trillion that has been added, it was war and tax cuts for the rich. Okay. And when it comes to war, where's that money go to? The rich, military industrial complex, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, things like that. Okay. So we are up to our ears in debt because we gave all this money to the rich. And how are we going to fix it? We're going to lay off a bunch of people at the Department of Education, working class people. So we go in debt because we give all money to the rich. And then who has to take a freaking haircut? Who's the people who has to pay for it? Who do we have to lay off? We got to lay off working class people, because we got to save government money to pay for all of that money that we gave to the rich. And we got to lay off working class people to do that. Might I add this? I don't care what you think about the government. It's too big. It's too small. It's too many people. Let's talk about it financially. So what does Trump say? We're going to lay these people off and save the money, which means what? We're going to lay these people off and we're going to now fold that money into paying the debt, but they didn't. We lay these people off, and I said it before it happened. We lay these working class people off, soccer moms and dads, and then we increase the the Pentagon budget by more than the amount that was, quote, saved by laying off working class. You lay off people who are productive in society, and you increase the Pentagon budget by more. So did you save money? No, you didn't save a dime. You actually put us further in debt. And how did you put us further in debt? By screwing over working class people. So don't tell me, oh, the government's too expensive. We got to lay off a bunch of working class people. So what would I prefer? If the United States government is going to spend money, would I prefer they spend more money on war, and less money go into the working class? Those people, at least at the Department of, you name it, I don't know, the Interior, at least they're going to go out and buy a house and a car and a big screen TV and toys for their kids and football and soccer gear for their kids or playing. They're going to spend it productively in the economy. But now it's going to go to buy more Hellfire missiles that are going to go to Israel, that Israel ain't going to pay us a stinking dime for. So you're going to lay people off. You're going to take that money. You're going to build more missiles, and you're going to give them free to Israel to slaughter people. I don't consider that good economics. Not only that, you told me you were going to save money, and you didn't. You just laid people off, and you spent more than you were spending before you laid them off on war. Now, you got to keep the Trump tax cuts, which are gigantic cuts for the rich. So what do we have from the Republicans? After saying Biden's overspending and Trump is coming in and Doge Boy is coming in and they've got to set this train on the right track and they got to get us back, blah, blah, blah. The Republican budget adds 20 trillion to debt. 20 trillion. We got 37 trillion in debt. The Republican budget adds another 20 trillion over the next 10 years. And if that ain't bad enough, they add $20 trillion to the debt. And it's on more tax cuts for the rich and more war. And do you think next year they ain't going to add more? After telling us how bad the Democrats are, oh my God. Now, they then go out and Trump says, I know, I'm going to launch an economic war. Now, here's what I have to say. The system is already not viable as an economic system, so it's going to collapse far before those 10 years. You just did something to make it collapse even faster by adding even more debt. Oh, 37 trillion. Enough. Let's go to 57 trillion. What the hell? Why not? Let's double down, triple down, quadruple down. But let's make sure we lay off a lot of working class people first before they do that, because how else we have all the money for the rich people and the military if we don't lay off more working class people? And then Trump does a Hail Mary. And he says, I'm going to, now, what is this about? It's getting more and more obvious. Something Dr. Jack said. Two things are going on here. Number one, they need more money. So if I'm going to keep spinning like a drunken sailor, which Trump and the Republicans are, doesn't matter. That's the system we're in. If I'm going to keep spinning like a drunken sailor, I'm going to need more money. So I know I'll do tariffs on everybody. A big part of the tariffs were two things. Number one, we're going to bring in lots more money. That way, that'll allow us to spend like drunken sailors for a little bit longer until the thing collapses. That's it. We're going to spend. It was a Hail Mary, not a Hail Mary to save the system, not a Hail Mary to stop doing stupid things, but a Hail Mary to allow us to continue to spend like drunken sailors. If we could spend like drunken sailors for another 2 years and the system will collapse, this will allow us to spend like drunken sailors for another 6 years and then the system will collapse. No thought of trying to stop the system from collapsing. That ain't an option. It's pathetic. So that's where we are now. We were the system now who guys come in and they're just like, how can we continue to do this just a little bit longer? You know what it's like? It's like the guy with a gambling addiction. And he loses a bunch of money. And he's like, I can sell my car and then I'll win it back. And he sells his car and then he sells his house note. And then he's like, what can I do? And he goes up to, and he's like, what can I do to get more money? And the guy at the casino says, well, you can apply for credit cards. And if you get these credit cards, great, great, great. And what does he do? He's going deeper and deeper and further into debt. He's taking himself closer and faster to economic destruction. But he just wants one more credit card so he can just gamble. If I can just gamble another hour, I'll win it all back. Something will happen. There'll be a miracle. I'll turn this thing down a little. Just let me gamble a little bit longer. Can I get one more credit card? He gets one more credit card and he can gamble another hour. After that, he's out. He doesn't want to stop. He doesn't want to fix it. He just wants to gamble another hour because, boy, some miracle's going to happen. I'll hit it big. And what happens? Here's what happens with the gambler. The more desperate he gets, the bigger chances he starts to take. The more he has to put down, the more odds that he has to go against because he's more and more desperate. So what's happening now? As our system starts to get, so what happens when water circles the drain? It gets faster and faster and faster and faster down the bottom, right? Now we have the Trump team that's in, and as they see the system collapsing, they just got to take bigger chances. That's all it is. That's all Trump is doing. As he sees the system collapse, and he's like, we got to make a bigger bet. It ain't going to work. You're not going to win. It's not going to come on 14 red. Ain't happening, buddy. Not going to happen. You're not going to win. The house is going to win. The house always wins. But what's not going to happen is you ain't going to stop gambling. He's willing to do anything but stop gambling. And all he's doing, where what Biden did was every couple months, Biden would throw all of this liquidity into the system. And he would, just, I think we were getting every 3 months, we got another $1 trillion worth of debt, like $4 trillion a year. right? Trump wants to change it to 2 trillion a year, but he wants to try to get some money to some additional money through strong arming everybody worldwide with tariffs, but it backfired because we do not have the economic horsepower we once had, so people aren't going to bend to us. So guess what? You bet on 14 red, and it didn't land on 14 red because the whole thing is rigged. The guy under the his foot is on a pedal underneath the spinning board, and he's going to make sure it doesn't land there. You ain't winning. So Trump looks at that. He's like, "Oh my God, we got to do something. Let's try a Hail Mary." I know tariffs for everybody. Well, it's always just a Hail Mary. That's all it was. It was a Hail Mary. It was a try. Nice try, Trump. It was stupid. It was never going to work. But yeah, Biden was just going to do it his way. You were going to do it that way. Well, you just bring us to collapse all the closer. And now the second part of it was, and we got to take out China. And again, what was it? It was a Hail Mary to try to destroy China. They looked at it and they're like, we can go to war with China. Crap. We're locked into a war in Ukraine with Europe, and we don't know what the hell to do there. We can't get out. We can't stay there. They're screwing us over. I don't know what to do. What the hell are we going to do? And we've lost the war. And how do we get out of that? And we've been, humiliated by the Russians, and we've lost. What do we do here? And we've lost so much gear and war material there. Crap. We're screwed. Meanwhile, oh my God, we're locked in a war in the Middle East, and we're using up every. How do we get out of that one, and how do we stop? Oh, we got a mess here, and we're using up all our war material, and we just can't go to war with China as much as we'd like to. We don't have the ability to do that right now. We can't continue to fight a war in the Middle East and fight a war in China, and crap. I guarantee you this. This is something I believe in. I guarantee you that when Hegseth and Trump and those people came in and they went to the Pentagon, they said, "How we looking?" And they said, "The cupboard's bare, buddy." I guarantee you that. How we looked on missiles, the cupboard's bare. Bombs, bare. Bullets, bare. Artillery's a bare. That when they came in and they said, "Give me an evaluation. How are we looking?" They said, we've blown everything that we had was either blown up in on the killing fields of Ukraine, or it's been sent to Israel and they're using it and they're firing it up. We got nothing left. We can't go attack China, and hopefully maybe we can get South Korea to do it, but they ain't so happy right now, and we got problems. So what do we do? And so I think this was a Hail Mary. It was like, oh my God, China's getting stronger and stronger. There's nothing, we can't attack them right now as much as we'd love to start World War III. We can't really attack them. We would if we could. So let's do a Hail Mary. We'll try to take them out economically. And that's just as likely to work as your economic Hail Mary is to save the U.S. economy. The odds are you got two chances, slim and fat, right? So Trump has a dual Hail Mary. One Hail Mary to try to save a collapsing economic system that can't possibly work, and another Hail Mary to try to take out China economically. Now, China's going to hurt it economically, but China can survive. Can we? Their system is expanding at like 5% per year. Okay, so let's just say, let me give you an example. Perhaps we've seen this before. We launched an economic war against Russia, and Russia experienced what one could call close to a recession, but not really a recession, right? They had some inflation about the same as us, and their economy dropped down, but they were very, very wise. I remember when I was working at Sputnik, all the things that the Russians were doing. They were working hard. The Russians were doing smart, hard, bureaucratic work. I remember at Sputnik, there were people in the studio, and what they had people doing was reading advertisements that they were sending, like to Kazakhstan or something, right? What Russia was doing is tough bureaucratic work, spending work. They were like reaching out to companies in other parts of the world saying, "Hey, you want to buy this? Can we sell you this? Can we buy this from you?" They were doing the little teeny bits of detailed work that says, "We sell widgets. Let's go around the world and find somebody that'll buy our widgets. We sell this. Let's go around the world. Hey, we'll buy this if you buy that," right? So they did hard, little teeny grunt work to keep their economy going and strengthen their economy, and it grew, and it's growing. So Russia dropped out for about a year to a year and a half. Their economy fell off a bit, and then boom, it exploded, right? Because one of the things that happened was They kept a lot of the money that they made, a lot of it stayed there. They got to is everything perfect in Russia? Certainly not. For instance, I would say they trade with India in rupees. They're loaded now with rupees by trading with rupees, and they don't know what the hell to do with all these rupees. So it's not perfect with Russia. Do they have things they need to work through? Absolutely. But they were able to work through what they're doing and get back on the road. And now their economy is one of the fastest growing in the world. And they've risen to the fourth largest economy in the world. They're rocking and rolling, right? Here's my point. Could China experience a slowdown for a year or a couple years? Absolutely, they could, but they're going to come out of it because it's a planned economy. And they'll look at it and they'll say, this is how we're going to do it. Here's our plan. Here's what we're going to cut back. Here's what we're going to do. And they got stuff that people want. And guess what? I read this thing where China stopped buying U.S. beef. Sorry, we ain't buying none of it from you. And Australia said, we'll sell you beef. And now they're buying all of their beef from Australia, right? Now, don't get me wrong. If there is a world slowdown, which we're having, right? So now Australia sells them a lot more beef. But if there's economic slowdown, some of the other things that Australia sells them may not sell as much, and it may even out, and it may, so the economy is going to take a bump, is going to take a hit. But because the Chinese have a planned economy, they can plan how to come out of it. And just like the Russians, they can dip for a year and come back strong, or maybe 2 years, whatever. There's going to be economic slowdown. But my point is, but we're still screwed. And our plan didn't work. And that's where we are. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. So here's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to take a look and see what we have in the way of, are there any super chats? Do we see any super chats? If there's super chats, I'm going to answer them. All right, let's go. Oh, Craig. Rick says, Garland, do you think Kellogg and Witkoff are good cop, bad cop? Kellogg holding NATO, EU on the line, and Witkoff to hold the interest of Russia, but both not achieving anything. It's all a show. I think they are, but not intentionally. I think they really do represent rather than, hey, I got an idea, you go out here and stage this good cop, bad cop thing. I think there really are actually factions of the ruling elite. So rather than good cop, bad cop, I think they represent dueling factions in the ruling elite that want to go different ways, if that makes any sense to you. Good cop, bad cop implies that it's all a show. I don't think so. I think there really are dramatic fractures in the ruling elite, and they represent dueling fractures in the ruling elite. All right. Dueling factions. I said fractures, but same thing. All right. Thank you very much. Andrea says, oh, wow, we got a new YouTube member. That's awesome. Thank you very much, Andrea Aliati. That's right. You can click on join and become a YouTube member. Thank you very much, Andrea. Let me continue to look. Any more super chats? Any more super chats? Still looking. That's it for the super chats. Let's look on Rockfin. Let's see if somebody on Rockfin has something very important that they want to say. We're going to Rockfin. We're going to Rockfin. Come on. All right, we're at Rockfin. Garland, blue and yellow are Easter colors also. Thank you very much. Okay. Chabot is my favorite self-described black pill guest. He'll be on tomorrow at noon. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And I wanted to mention what somebody said yesterday when I talked about the blue yellow propaganda. They're like, Garland, but blue and yellow, those are the colors of Walmart. Yes, they are. I know that they in fact are. But my point is, there is a very specific shade of blue, a very kind of a weird, interesting powder blue. That is the color of the Ukrainian flag. And if you go to Walmart, at least the ones near me, you will see the traditional Walmart colors, like on their bag. But as you go around, you'll see that powdery sky bluish kind of Ukrainian flag blue now with yellow all over the place. It's obvious. It's everywhere that they're putting this thing. It's not an accident that everywhere you go, the blue yellow color of propaganda pops up. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. I'll end by saying, let me see any more else. All right, I'll end by saying this. Thanks, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. If you are available, if you are able to, then there's Buy Me a Coffee. Certainly, you can go and buy me a coffee, and you can it just says $5, however many coffees you want each. And of course, you can make that monthly, so that's highly appreciated. We got Patreon, we got PayPal, we've got all kinds of stuff like that going across the bottom, right? You name it. And even if you want to send me a letter. Hopefully, there's no anthrax in it. P.O. Box 32. Look, it's going right across there at the bottom of the screen. So I even have, if you want to send a donation, if you want to send a mail and say hi, if you want to send a card, happy whatever the hell, I don't know, happy something or other, P.O. Box 32, Glen Burnie, Maryland, 21061. And that is right across the bottom of the screen. Feel free to do that. Thanks a lot, everybody. It's important. Share this on all your social media platforms, number one. Number two, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. The one and only Larry C. Johnson. And back on 9 p.m. with Scott Ritter. And hopefully, maybe I'll touch base with him. We might even have Andre Martianoff. I'm out. Let me get this done.